Welcome back to This Week in Bevy. This week we have 0.16.0-rc.3. That's the third release candidate in the 0.16 line. As always on docs.rs, if you go up to the top left and you click the 0.16.0-rc releases, you will be able to access the documentation. The draft migration guide is of course available. This is the in-progress migration guide for 16 that will be published when the actual stable release goes out. And if you want a more granular list of the changes since RC2, that is also available over on GitHub. At this point in the release candidate process, crates have started releasing release candidate compatible versions. So some widely used crates like bevy-ui-GUI and bevy asset loader, as you can see here, have RC compatible versions if you want to test your dependencies and see if your application is ready to test the release candidate. And at this point in the release candidate, the list of PRs that were merged this week is mostly small bug fixes and other adjustments, with the exception of the static subtree transform propagation work, which was already attempted to be merged and actually did land in 18.589. This improves the performance of transform propagation for scenes with large amounts of static transforms. And with error handling being a big 0.16 feature, error messages are also seeing improvements in PRs like 18.593 and 18.683. And of course, each week Alice's merge train is a maintainer level view into active PRs and how the Bevy sausage is made. The merge trains over the last couple weeks have focused on release candidate related work as the RC stabilizes and we get a stable 0.16 release. And that brings us to the showcases, which kicks off with Chessmated, which got this nice new studio logo, a new UI, settings, and more. Notably, this release, being a chess implementation, also has some different modes to play against, including random movement, aggressive movement, and positional movement. And then we've got this rolling ball game, which probably isn't going to see much more progress other than this, but this is a rolling ball game with a post-processing shader, which has its source code available on GitHub. So if you're interested in how any of this works, go check out the Git repo. And here's some updates to Lumina's UI, which is implemented using Velist, which is a Velo and Typist UI solution, which makes it unique amongst UI solutions, most of which go for some kind of HTML to Rust solution or HTML to Bevy solution. This instead chooses to use the Typist markup language, which is a LaTeX competitor. And that brings us to Open Fortress. Open Fortress is a new open source colony simulator heavily inspired by Dwarf Fortress. The code for this one is open source and accessible on GitHub, staying true to its name, Open Fortress. And here's some Factorio-esque action in a demo that we've seen before. The left back lane in this case stores items and the right back lane sells them. The arrow fillers are chance-based depending on how much of the arrows glow. The closest filter filters all of the items and have the type printed on them. And here you can see the Noumenal 2.0 beta. The 2.0 beta is available on supported iOS devices as a test flight build. So if you want to see some hybrid ray-traced HDR graphics using Bevy 0.16's release candidate, this is definitely something you should look into. Noumenal, for those unaware, is a fast 3D modeling app for iOS. And then we've got this ESP32 Spooky Maze game. This is a shared ESP32 and desktop implementation, where the embedded implementation utilizes embedded graphics and MIP IDSI on embedded. Honestly, it's even wild that we're talking about this every week and that Bevy can run on no standard devices. ESP32s, if you're unaware, are microcontrollers that look a little bit like this. They come in a variety of formats, but are generally very small. And this is a demo of Nano 9, which is kind of like a Pico 8++ environment built with Bevy mod scripting. Games can be programmed for this in Lua or in Rust. If you want to extend it, you do have to use Rust. For example, the TV shader, which is an old style CRT monitor shader, had to be done using Rust in this example. And this one is an interesting demo. This is actually two browsers, top, bottom, for a multiplayer space fighting game that was recently refactored to use Matchbox. This is currently running on a test instance that requires two players or browsers side by side, as I have them here, loaded in to play. And then we've got this Microbial strategy game, which is a 2D strategy game built in Bevy, inspired by Civilization, but with a microbial twist. Bacteria and microbes battle for resources like carbon, nitrogen, sulfur, and so on a hexagon grid. And this demo in particular is an audio-based demo, so I highly encourage you to go check it out to get the full immersive experience. This is AudioNimbus, which is a wrapper around Valve's Steam Audio that provides immersive spatial audio. In addition to the YouTube demo that showcases the audio, there's a walkthrough project, and the source for the project and the demo are available on GitHub. If you've been following any of the audio working group, you may be wondering how this compares, and this is a wrapper while the audio working group is working on more of a from-scratch Rust implementation. And then we've got a demo of character customization that uses separate GLB files for each segment of the character asset. Some more details about how the project uses exporters in Blender, including AutoRig Pro and the built-in collection exporter, are included in the Discord thread. And that brings us into the crates. First off with HTML to Bevy. HTML to Bevy, as you can see here, allows you to make UI using tags and styling similar to HTML. This crate was extracted from the author's own projects and shared since they found it useful in their projects and thought you might also find it useful for your projects. And then we've got Bevy Input Prompts 0.1. This is a crate that maps Bevy input types to asset paths to input prompt packs from multiple creators. And Bevy Hanabi is always an interesting release, although I have to say the compression will probably kill this fireworks demo, especially because of the bloom in use. Bevy Hanabi in this case follows a common pattern where the new version, which is 0.15, that is the Bevy Hanabi version, not the Bevy core version, is a major feature update. This release is still compatible with Bevy 0.15 before the future Bevy 0.16 compatibility release. 0.15 brings new hierarchical effects, which is the ability to parent an effect to another effect, a complete rewrite of the ribbon and trail feature, and a new debug settings to trigger GPU captures. And then we've got bevy-ui-gradients. This is actually a crate done by somebody that I know does a lot of UI work in the core Bevy repo, and this crate supports basic UI gradients. It supports linear, radial, and conic gradients, as you can see here, which is fairly self-explanatory. And here we see a demo for Bevy Ballistic 0.1. Bevy Ballistic is launch velocity calculation for game projectiles to hit a specific target based on a given gravity. It only has one dependency on Bevy Math, and you can see it working in this clip. And then we've got Bevy Trait. Bevy Trait allows you to implement standard Bevy systems in traits via a proc macro. Take, for example, this interactive trait, which allows you to specify a function that returns an impulse system. And here's an experimental crate called dioxus-in-bevy. Dioxus-in-bevy is an experimental crate with the aim being to integrate the Dioxus VDOM renderer, that's a virtual DOM renderer, via Bevy ECS components. While the crate is currently experimental, it does work for basic things. And if you're unfamiliar with Dioxus, go over to the Dioxus website to learn more about the framework. And Bevy iOS IAP 0.6 is out with a pretty straightforward release. Bevy iOS IAP, that's in-app purchase, provides access to the iOS standard StoreKit 2 Swift API from inside Bevy apps. 0.6 brings support for iOS 16. And finally, we've got Bevy Northstar, which is collision features merged into an HPA star pathfinding plugin. Next steps include cleanup on the API and documentation. The crate author is currently asking for feedback, so now's a great time to go check it out and provide any feedback you might want to give to support your game. And that's it for this week in Bevy. As always, we have the rest of the pull requests that were merged if you'd like to look through the list, as well as the issues and PRs that were opened this week if you'd like to get involved. That's it for me, and I'll see you in the next one.